October 14th, 2025, 6:47 p.m. I was still at my desk, still working, still doing everything right. And then an email came in about organizational changes, and right behind it, a calendar invite, 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, and all the blood drained out of my head. Because I knew, you just know, right? 10 months ago, I bought this house. I relocated my whole life to be closer to the office. My wife and I, we picked out the paint colors together. We talked about which room would be the guest room, where we'd put the grill on the deck. We thought we were building something. And now, 10 months later, I'm sitting there staring at this calendar invite, and all I can think is, not again. Because this is my second layoff in 3 years. And I had to decide right then, do I tell my wife tonight, or do I wait until it's official? And I decided I couldn't sit across from her at dinner and pretend everything was fine. I couldn't carry that alone. Not again. So I walked downstairs, and I told her, and she fell apart. She started crying. Not the quiet kind, the kind where her whole body shakes and she can't catch her breath. Because we both knew what this meant. We'd been here before, and last time nearly broke us. And I just stood there watching her, and I thought about all the people who told me the first layoff was a blessing in disguise, that it would lead to something better, that everything happens for a reason. Well, here's what happened. I found another job. I worked hard. I bought a house. I did everything you're supposed to do. I followed the playbook exactly, and it happened again. So here's what nobody tells you about layoffs. And I mean really tells you. Not the LinkedIn advice, not the career coach platitudes, not the update your resume and stay positive garbage. The actual truth, it's not about updating your resume. It's not about networking harder. It's not about staying positive and trusting the process. It's about survival. Pure, raw survival. But before I get into what I'm doing now, I want to tell you where I've been, because I think it matters. I've spent my career in tech, over a decade building things, solving problems, leading teams. And I was good at it. I really was. I cared about the work. I cared about the people I worked with. I showed up early and stayed late, and I believed that effort would be rewarded. I remember early in my career, I was the guy who volunteered for the hardest projects, who took the calls nobody wanted to take, who believed that if you just proved your value, if you just made yourself indispensable, you'd be safe. And for a while, that seemed true. I got promoted, I got the raises, I got pulled into meetings where leadership asked for my opinion. I got the kind of feedback that makes you think you actually matter to a company, that they see you, that they value you as a human being, not just a resource. And I remember this one project, this was maybe 5 years ago, where I was leading a major initiative, and I was working insane hours. I was on calls at 6 a.m. with teams overseas, and then I was still at my laptop at 10 p.m. doing documentation, and my wife would come into the room and say, "Are you coming to bed?" And I'd say, "Just 30 more minutes." And 30 minutes would become 2 hours, and I told myself it was worth it, that I was building something, that the company needed me. But then the first layoff happened, 3 years ago, and it shattered something inside me, because I realized that none of that mattered. Not the late nights, not the sacrifices, not the loyalty, not a single one of those extra hours I gave them. When they need to cut costs, you're a line item on a spreadsheet. That's it. That's all you ever were. And I remember, after that first layoff, I met this guy at a networking event. He was 56. He'd been a senior director at a Fortune 500 company for 17 years. 17 years of his life given to one organization. And he'd been looking for work for 14 months. And he told me something I'll never forget. He said, "I gave them everything. I missed my kids growing up. I skipped vacations. I worked through my father's funeral. And you know what? They replaced me with someone who makes half my salary. and nobody even said goodbye. And I looked at him, and I saw my own future staring back at me, and it terrified me. So when I got the second chance, when I landed this new role, I told myself it would be different. I'd be smarter this time. I'd save more. I'd prepare for the worst. I would not be caught off guard again. And I was disciplined. I built up 6 months of Runway. I was careful with every dollar. But here's the thing about 6 months of Runway. It sounds like a safety net until you're staring at a mortgage payment in a soft housing market during a season when nobody's buying, in an industry that's hemorrhaging jobs left and right. 6 months sounds like a cushion. But when you do the real math, it's a countdown. So here's what my life actually looks like right now. And I'm telling you this, not for sympathy. I'm telling you because I think too many people pretend they're fine when they're drowning, and that pretending helps nobody. We have about 6 months of savings. Maybe, if we cut everything non-essential, if we eat cheap, if we cancel every subscription, every small luxury, every little thing that makes daily life feel normal. But our mortgage is significant. We bought this house 10 months ago in a market that's since cooled off. Similar roles in my field are getting eliminated everywhere. It's not just my company, it's the entire sector. And it's the worst time of year to sell a house, even in a good market. In this market, we'd be lucky to break even. So the first piece of advice everyone gives you, try to save your house. Call your lender, restructure your mortgage, talk to your bank. And you know what? That advice doesn't help when you're drowning. When you're drowning, you can't think about swimming technique. You just need air. And here's what keeps me up at 3 a.m. It's probably what keeps you up too, if you've been through this. It's not just the money. The money is terrifying, yes. But it's deeper than that. It's sitting across from my wife at the kitchen table and telling her, we're probably going to have to pack up and leave. Leave the house we just made ours. Leave the neighborhood where we were just starting to learn our neighbors' names. Maybe move to a different state entirely. Start over completely. Again. It's the health insurance, which costs more than a car payment, and which you absolutely cannot go without. Not at this stage of life, not with a family, but which feels like a cruel joke when you have no income coming in. It's looking in the mirror in the morning and admitting the thing you don't want to admit. That you're scared, that you don't have the answers, that the confidence you project to the world is a performance. And I am scared. I'm genuinely terrified. And here's the thing I'm most embarrassed to admit. Every single day I put on a brave face. I tell people I'm optimistic. I say the right things. It's going to work out. Something will come along. This is just a chapter. But the dread is always there. When I wake up at 3 a.m. and reach for my phone to check job boards, it's there. When I'm scrolling listings for the 100th time and seeing the same recycled postings, it's there. When my wife asks me if everything's going to be okay, and I look her in the eyes and say yes, the dread is right there behind my teeth, and I swallow it down every single time. And I can't stop thinking about all the other people in the same boat right now. The ones who don't have 6 months of runway, the ones who have 3 weeks, the ones who are choosing between groceries and medications, between rent and keeping the heat on. And I think about that guy from the networking event. I looked him up recently. He's driving for a rideshare company now. 17 years as a senior director at a Fortune 500. And now he's driving strangers to the airport at 5 a.m. just to keep the lights on. And I wonder, is that where I'm headed? Is that where all of us are headed? So, about a week ago, something shifted in my head. I was sitting at my kitchen table at 2 in the morning, couldn't sleep, and I was doing what I always do when I can't sleep, running the numbers, over and over and over. Like maybe if I stare at the spreadsheet long enough, the math will somehow change, and I realized something that should have been obvious a long time ago. I've been trying to get back to normal, trying to find another job, another company, another cubicle, another boss, who might one day call me into a room and tell me my position has been eliminated. I've been trying to rebuild the exact thing that already failed me. Twice. And I thought, why? Why am I fighting to go back to something that keeps collapsing underneath me? The traditional employment model has changed. Job security doesn't exist anymore, not the way our parents understood it. Companies will hire you, work you until there's nothing left, and cut you the moment the quarterly numbers look soft. They'll do it over Zoom. They'll have someone from HR you've never met read from a script. And then your email gets deactivated before you've even finished processing what just happened. That's the reality now. And if that's the reality, then I need to stop pretending it isn't. I have to fundamentally change how I think about financial security. I can't keep building my entire life on someone else's foundation. So I did something I should have done years ago. I calculated my exact runway, down to the dollar. Not a rough estimate, not a hopeful guess. The real, ugly, uncomfortable number. And then I looked at every option, every single one, including the ones that feel extreme, the ones that financial advisors won't even mention because they're too uncomfortable. I looked at location arbitrage, the idea that if where I live is bleeding me dry, maybe I need to move somewhere it costs half as much, somewhere I've never even visited, somewhere I have no connections, no community, no history, just to survive, just to buy myself enough time to build something new. I looked at what could be cut immediately, what's truly essential versus what's just comfort disguised as necessity. And that's a brutal exercise, by the way, because you realize how much of what feels like a need is actually just habit. And then I started thinking about something that's been nagging at me since my first layoff 3 years ago. Every financial tool I tried, every app, every tracker, every dashboard, they all wanted my bank login. They wanted full access to my accounts. They wanted to aggregate my data and sell it to advertisers and make me dependent on their system forever. And not a single one of them had the one thing I actually needed: a clear, honest, no-nonsense picture of exactly how long I can survive and what my real options are when everything falls apart. So I started building it myself. It's called Wealth Check, and I want to be completely honest about what this is and what it isn't. It's not some polished product from a well-funded startup. I'm not standing here with a success story and a hockey stick growth chart. I'm building this thing in real time, right now, while I'm packing up my house, while I'm figuring out where we're going to move, while I'm 3 weeks into unemployment and trying not to panic. I'm building it because I need it, desperately, and because I think you need it too. Here's what it does. There's a layoff survival calculator that shows you exactly how long you can last at different spending levels. Not a vague ballpark. Real numbers based on your actual savings, your actual expenses, your actual life. There's a severance package analyzer. Because most people, myself included, the first time around, just sign whatever they put in front of you. You're in shock. You're not thinking clearly. You're definitely not thinking about negotiation. But there's almost always room to negotiate. And I left money on the table last time because nobody told me that. There's an emergency expense identifier that flags what to cut right now. Not the stuff financial advice columns talk about, like cancelling streaming services to save $12 a month. The real decisions, the hard ones, the ones that actually change your trajectory. And there's a Runway dashboard that counts down every single day. Because when you're in survival mode, vagueness is your enemy. You need precision. You need to know exactly where you stand when you open your eyes every morning. I built all of this because every financial tool out there was designed for people who are already comfortable. People who are optimizing and fine-tuning. People who have the luxury of thinking about 5-year plans and retirement allocations. But what about us? What about the people who just need to know if they can make it to next month? That's who Wealth Check is for. And look, I don't know if this will work. I don't know if anyone besides me will ever use it. I might fail spectacularly and publicly. But here's what 2 layoffs in 3 years have taught me. The first one taught me that you can't control what happens to your job, but you can control how you respond. The second one taught me something harder, that responding isn't enough. You have to build something that nobody can take from you, something's that's actually yours. And I think about that guy, driving strangers to the airport at 56 after giving 17 years of his life to a company that forgot his name within a month. And I think about my wife, who deserves so much better than this constant grinding cycle of hope and fear. And I think about every person watching this right now who's sitting at their own kitchen table at 2 a.m., staring at a spreadsheet, running the same numbers over and over, hoping somehow the math will change. The math doesn't change on its own. We have to change it. So I'm putting a link in the description to the Layoff Survival Calculator. It's free. It's completely private. No bank logins, no data harvesting, no selling your information to anyone. Just you and your numbers and the honest truth about where you stand. Calculate your runway, see your real situation, make your hard decisions with real information instead of guesses and 3 a.m. anxiety. And if you want to follow this journey, watch me either build something meaningful or learn some very hard and very public lessons. Subscribe, because I'm going to document all of it, the progress, the setbacks, and the terrifying parts in between. Because I know I'm not the only one going through this. There are thousands of us right now, maybe millions. People staring at calendar invites they didn't ask for. People telling their families news they never wanted to deliver. People trying to figure out what comes next. And if we stop pretending we're fine and start being honest about what's actually happening, maybe, just maybe, we can figure this out together. So leave a comment. Tell me your story. Tell me what you're going through, because I want to know. And I promise you, whatever it is, you're not the only one. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.